Hello everybody, welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Memorial DFS Tactics show. Got a lot to get into. We're going to take one final look at the forecast. We're going to check some total rankings that we've covered throughout the week as a quick refresher and reminder as we head into making some lineups for the Memorial. I'm excited, so let's get straight into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. Go check them out. It's simply well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of my social media. This is Twitter and Instagram, where I posted some research earlier this week on previous winners at the Memorial going back to 2012. So if you would like to see that research, give me a follow over at your preferred place of social media, Twitter or Instagram. Twitter is also where I place my betting cards weekly for the PGA tournament of the week, so that will be no different. I will have that out later tonight after the show. So if you want to see my betting cards, give me a follow over at Twitter. And Twitter is also where I post my daily 3 up, 3 down for baseball. 3 players that I think will accrue their value and 3 players that I don't. So if you want to see some quick hitting baseball content, give me a follow over at Twitter. And then I usually say lastly, I do have one more announcement after, but chat is open. We're live, obviously, as I ramble through this intro. Want to hear from you all. What questions do you all have regarding players at the Memorial? What statistics are you thinking are going to be the most important? Have you made any wagers? Who are you pivoting to and fading away from? All that good stuff. So jump into chat. I will be more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Then the last announcement that I have, starting, it's actually been going on for a few weeks now, but definitely wanted to make sure it was okay with him before I mention anything. But after the show this evening, I will be over at Gabe's chat through his article that he does for the Fringe. If you are not familiar with Gabe, I really suggest go checking out his work over on Twitter. You can find him. I'll put his handle in the description or pin the comment with it. He writes a very, very good article every week that I certainly use to help prep for my week. And we have been working a little bit back and forth, and I believe it's going to be a pretty common occurrence that after my show I will be in his chat room over on Substack and answering questions over there as well. So if you would like to join me over there, that would certainly be welcome. I know Gabe would appreciate it. I would not endorse Gabe if I didn't have all of the confidence in what he writes and what he works on. So consider going and giving Gabe a subscribe over at his article with the Fringe. So with that, we have a lot to get into. Pretty excited. Things are looking up, and we're going to try to turn around our luck the past month or so, at least my luck in general. Some of the community has had some pretty big wins, so I'm going to try to jump on that bandwagon. That sounds really fun. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2023 Memorial. And we're going to start over at Windfinder as we normally do and get one last look at the forecast. And it is beautiful. A little warm, I would think, at least for Columbus, Ohio in late May. Highs, mid 80s. I've heard even maybe up into the 90s, but no wind. Both days, the wind starts out pretty calm, but then picks up in the afternoon to maybe 8 to 10 miles an hour, and no AM PM favor that I see, since both mornings are pretty calm and then working their way up into, like I said, the 8 to 10 mile an hour range. And then for the weekend, Saturday looks like there might be a little bit. Hard to say because we don't have the super forecast here at Windfinder for the weekend. That'll come out tomorrow. But at least for Thursday and Friday, no wind to really consider, and no AM PM favor that at least that I am seeing. So we're going to move straight into Fantasy National. We've got a few things to review or to give some baseline before we go into the mixed condition model and the rankings. We've talked all week about Muirfield and the specifics around it, so I'm not going to go into too much, but I do want to give you all some strokes gained total rankings for the field this week. And the first filter that I have is Jack Nicklaus. This is, of course, a Jack Nicklaus design. This is Jack's place, but he's also designed a few other courses that are mainstays on the PGA Tour. Valhalla, most notably, probably, where the PGA Championship will be next year. He's hosted the PGA Championship a couple times. PGA National, I realized that I don't think I've mentioned this through the week, but PGA National, the host of the Honda Championship. So that is a Jack Nicklaus design, another very tough course, very difficult course, Muirfield Nicklaus Tournament course over at the American Express. So he has a few courses that are mainstays on the PGA Tour. So going back to 2019, just to give guys enough rounds, I mean, you see Sungjae has 43, but quite a few players have in the upper teens to lower 20s. I wanted to make sure I had enough rounds to make it significant. Your top players on Jack Nicklaus designs going back to 2019, Patrick Cantlay, of course, two-time winner here at Muirfield, Colin Morikawa, Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Billy Horschel, defending champion here at Muirfield, Russell Henley, Xander Schauffele, Shane Lowry, Jason Day, and Jordan Spieth. So those are your top 10 for Jack Nicklaus designs. I'll scroll on down a little bit, let you see about the top 30 or so. Rounding out the top 15 or so, Sungjae, Chris Kirk, Eric Cole. Only 5 rounds, but he has played well in the very few rounds he's been on Jack Nicklaus designs. Justin Thomas, Rory, and Sahith Theegala. And then at the other end of the spectrum, players that have not played Jack Nicklaus designs well. Chad Ramey, again, only 5 rounds. Joel Damon, Hayden Buckley, Peter Malnati, Tom Hoagie, Joseph Bramlett, JJ Spawn, Emiliano Grillo, last week's winner at the Charles Schwab, has not played Jack Nicklaus designs very well. Going on down, some more players with a few rounds, Smalley and Power, David Lingmerth, Keegan Bradley, and so on and so forth. So there's a look at your top players and your bottom players on Jack Nicklaus designs. We'll work our way up in terms of filters. Nothing to do with wind as we looked at in Wind Finder. So we're going to look at long courses next. This is an extremely long course at 7,571 yards. So it would behoove us to take a look at some long course performance. Evening, Bruce. Thanks for jumping in chat. Looking forward to what I hope is matching your success at the Charles Schwab. I've got some interesting ideas on how to attack the Memorial this week. We'll see if it works out, but thanks for jumping in chat. So your top players on long courses, and a long course is defined as over 7,400 yards per Fantasy National, and this clearly fits that at almost 7,600. Your top performers on long courses: Jon Rahm, Xander, Scotty Scheffler, Corey Connors, Rory, Sam Stevens, Colin Morikawa, Sungjae, Jordan Spieth, and Keegan Bradley. Scrolling down, let you see the top 30-ish or so to round out the top 15 there. Kuchar, Chris Kirk, Victor Hovland, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Justin Thomas. The bottom end of your long course performers: Garrick Higgo, Adam Svensson, Adam Long, Ches Reavie, Dylan Fratelli, Kevin Kisner, Ben Taylor, Mackenzie Hughes, Jason Duffner, Lucas Herbert, Justin Lauer, Bo Hostler, and so on down. So these players generally don't play well on long courses. something that I don't think I did in terms of strokes gained total, but certainly applies to Muirfield and the Memorial. Let's take a look at long rough very, very quickly. This is very long rough, very difficult to play out of, and a lot of your majors have long rough, so it's generally a pretty good comparison. So your top players when rough has been long since 2021: Rory, Sungjae, Patrick Cantlay, Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Sam Burns, Terrell Hatton, Matt Fitzpatrick, Victor Hovland, and Jon Rahm. And again, I'll scroll on down, let you see the top 30 or so there for your viewing perusal. And then the bottom end of when rough is long, players that don't play well: Ben On, Dylan Fratelli, Robbie Shelton, Joel Damon, Will Gordon, Zach Johnson, Peter Malnati, Jason Duffner, Ben Taylor, Garrick Higgo, Lee Hodges, and so on down. And then the last thing that we're going to look at in terms of a strokes gained total performance before we jump into the mixed condition model and my rankings and whatnot is difficult. Muirfield has historically been difficult. I do not see that being any different this week, even with the wind dying down. This is just a very complete, difficult test of a player's game. So your top players when a round has been difficult since the beginning of 2021: Scotty Scheffler, Rory, Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, Jordan Spieth, Jon Rahm, Matt Fitzpatrick, Xander, Shane Lowry, and Patrick Cantlay. And then the top 30 again there for you. And then the bottom end of the field, players that have not played well when it's been difficult: Nico Echeverria, Kevin Kisner, Garrick Higgo, Jason Duffner, JJ Spawn, Robbie Shelton, Peter Malnati, Bo Hostler, Nikolai Højgaard, Luke Donald, Zach Johnson, Bo Hoag, Sepp Straka, JT Poston, and on down. So there's a look at quite a few different summaries, I guess would be the best way to put it, in terms of total performance. If you're on the fence about some players, perhaps you can use those as some tiebreaker scenarios in terms of total performance at these various filters: difficult, long rough, long courses, and Jack Nicklaus Designs. Good evening, Darnell. Thanks for jumping in chat. Glad to see you. Hopefully you are ready for the Memorial. We are going to try and mimic a little bit of the community success from last week. I certainly did not have the best of weeks, although I do feel a little bit more encouraged with my results, considering I was correct on who to avoid. I just didn't pick the right players to go to, but I did have the right players to avoid. So hopefully I'm going to match the success of telling you who to avoid with the players to go to this evening. But thanks for jumping in chat. Taking it down guaranteed. Well, I like the confidence. I wish I was that confident. I'm not, but I have some interesting viewpoints, I believe, that will give us some pretty good looks at some unique players this week that I think will play well. All right, so without any further delay, let's go ahead and check my mixed condition model that I have made for this year's Memorial. And we covered last year's Memorial at the end of the show on Friday, and I was pretty pleased with the results of it. Only 3 of my top 20 were that missed the cut. Now, the one thing that I docked myself on was that I didn't have last year's winner in my top 20, Billy Horschel. He was in my top 30, so certainly some room for improvement, but I was heavily on some players that weren't highly owned in terms of last year's Memorial. And last year, the focal point of the mixed condition model was in strokes gain approach and strokes gain around the green. I did not change that much. However, with strokes gain approach, I did add 5%, so it is 20% in terms of strokes gain approach this week. It is the most important shot type here at Muirfield. I believe it's the most important shot type in golf. With the rough so penal, players, I want to focus on players that are going to be able to hit these greens not necessarily proximity, but just are solid iron players through and through. So 20% in strokes gained approach, and of course focused on this calendar year. 15% around the green, and I used the filter long rough. You can absolutely argue to look at difficult. Muirfield is generally difficult. You could perhaps look at around the green or scrambling maybe with bent, fast and lightning bent, although we cover that in putting. I felt long rough was the most advantageous filter to look at with around the green, considering the majority of difficult courses that that are very difficult to play around the green, whether that's bunker or just heavy rough, generally has longer rough, like the majors. The Players Championship generally has long rough. So 15% in strokes gained around the green, and I have a little bit of extra percentage in this than I normally do because I don't have any scrambling. So that's the first bit that I will be cold to or weak to perhaps in terms of building the mixed condition model, let alone player-wise. I don't have any scrambling. I kept the around the green at 15%. We looked at last year's mixed condition model. Scrambling wasn't very predictive, so I felt like around the green was going to be a better representation of the players that will fare well here. And then, of course, with the long rough filter, 5% in fast and lightning bent greens. These greens have never been anything other than fast or lightning. 90% of the time they are lightning, but we can't just put lightning because even as recent as last year, there were I think there was one round that was fast last year, and then in 2021 the majority of the tournament was fast. So I did have to look at both fast and lightning speed greens, but we are obviously on bent, and only 5%. This is I wanted to put a little extra percentage in here, but with the heavy focus of strokes gained approach, with the added emphasis on around the green that I generally don't have in my mixed condition models, but around the green is very important in Muirfield. All I had left was 5% for putting. So if you think putting is going to be more important, then perhaps give some fast and lightning bent putters a little bit more weight in your rankings. If anything, I think it should be about 10% and not less, but all I had room for was 5%. 10% in bogey avoidance, and I always mention, throughout the weeks, whenever we're looking at scoring filters, whether that's birdies gained, bogeys, opportunities, I always prefer to match the metric with the scoring filter. So bogeys avoided when it's difficult, going back to 2021. Greens when it's difficult, and I really, really pondered which filter to use. I thought about long courses. I even thought about Jack Nicklaus to use as a filter, but in the end, I just felt most comfortable with greens with difficult, for greens and regulation gained, because Muirfield is difficult. It generally plays like a major, and I would treat that as difficult to par. So I wanted to see who is going to be able to hit their greens in regulation or gain them when it's difficult. So you can see the heavy emphasis in iron play this week, especially with the very, very minimal importance in off the tee. And we showed that Monday evening, that off the tee just doesn't really matter here at Muirfield. It's all about your approach and your short game. So heavy emphasis there. And then to round out the mixed condition model, 3s, 4s, and 5s, 10% in par 3s. Yes, 3 of the 4 par 3s measured to 200 to 225. But when we looked through the specifics of Muirfield and the players that play the best here regularly or continuously, all of the par 3 links matter. So I just felt most comfortable with all or total par 3s. I think it's actually going to be more important in the par 4s this week. 5% in all par 4s, 5% in 450 to 500 par 4s. 70% of your par 4s measure 450 to 5. It is the most important range of par 4s here, but I did not want to give it a whole lot of weight in the overall mixed condition model, as I think 3s, and as we'll talk about here in a second, 5s are going to be the most important. So 5% split each between all par 4s and the most prominent length here. And then finally, 15% in strokes gained par 5. You have to be able to score on these par 5s. They are scoreable, but you have to score on them as you quickly get into very, very difficult portions of the course where bogeys and double bogeys rise or creep up on you. So you have to take advantage of these par 5s here, 15% in par 5s. So there's the mixed condition model that I have for the Memorial this week. Again, just very quick recap. I'll be cold to anything off the tee related, but I'm pretty confident we saw that statistically that off the tee just really doesn't matter. I'll be cold to any scrambling specific, or maybe around the green if it's difficult, around the green, Jack Nicklaus, if putting, if I needed more percentage in putting, perhaps. And then the other maybe glaring weak, or I can't say weakness, glaring omission would be proximity. Again, I just did not feel comfortable with any particular length or total procs being important here at Muirfield. So if there is a specific range of approach shot, say 150 to 175, 175 to 2, or total procs, if that's important, I'll be weak to that. But that is what I have for you all in terms of a mixed condition model. Let's move on over to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings. Again, just a quick reminder, the FNGC rank is just purely by the numbers. The course value is an attempt at giving a player a value based on their performance in the past 5 years at that course. And then I do factor in percent owned, as we are trying to find unique options to use in DFS. So I do factor in percent owned into my rankings. The reveal of my top 10. My number 1 player this week is Jon Rahm. Second is Scotty Scheffler. Xander Schauffele, Jordan Spieth, Ricky Fowler round out my top 5. Rory, Patrick Cantlay, Justin Thomas, Sungjae, and Shane Lowry round out my top 10. I'm a little surprised that Patrick Cantlay is all the way down here in 7th. I personally would probably have him in the top 5. He's probably getting hurt by the fact that he is the most projected owned player. Guy just loves Muirfield, 2-time winner. Granted, one of those is with an asterisk, but 2-time winner. Nothing worse than a T32 here. Still 11th in the purely by the numbers. A lot to like with Patrick Cantlay. Rahm and Scheffler, of course, no big surprises there. Xander's just generally solid when a big field gathers, whether it's a major or a WGC or whatever. Jordan Spieth being 4th, the metrics really, really like him. His course value is very good. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to completely fade Jordan Spieth because I just don't know about his wrist. I think it's hurting more than it's letting on. But you see his ownership, if you're willing to go there, you're going to gain a whole lot of win equity, leverage, however you want to phrase it. You're going to gain a lot of uniqueness on your fellow contestants by going to Spieth. And then Ricky has played the Memorial very, very well throughout the years, even through his struggles. And you see the FNGC ranker, his numbers by the analytics, he's in much better form. He's back to being close to the old Ricky. You've seen Cantlay as high as 25. Yeah, I mean, I would not doubt that any one bit. Again, I get all of my projected ownerships from Fantasy National and the members at Fantasy National. So this very well could be a little bit lighter in terms of the ownership. I would imagine that Patrick Cantlay is going to be one of the most popular choices in lineups, but for good reason. And then elsewhere in the top 10, I was surprised. I mentioned it to the PGA. I did not see Rory being less than whatever he was that Wednesday night of the PGA, 10.5, 10.8, whatever percent. He ends up being sub 10%. Fantasy National members only have Rory at 10% right now. That's a very, very talented player to be that unique. Some Jay looks like a lot of people have been burned enough on him lately, and I've been fading him quite heavily the past month or so since he has been so popular. And Darnell, you and I have always went back and forth on Shane Lowry. He's always going to rate out well when difficult is a factor because he's generally played difficult courses well. You see 8th in greens when it's difficult. And one of the biggest reasons why, he's just a bogey avoider. He's a grinder. He's like a Tyrrell Hatton. They just grind out pars. And on courses where pars are good scores, Shane Lowry is gonna rise in the rankings. And you see, he's actually played the Memorial pretty darn well too. All right, enough of the rambling there. Let's go sort this on the price board and find out where the chalk is and figure out how we can maneuver around it, shall we? So, in the 5 digits, or what I say the 10Ks, but in the 5 digits, we have 5 players. Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, Rory, Patrick Cantlay, and Xander Schauffele. Well, you see, all 5 of these players are in my top 7, so it's not like I'm going to tell you to fade any of them. You're going to have to choose which chalk you want to use. I'm going to tell you now, just because of his price alone, it's going to be very, very hard to ignore Patrick Cantlay when you combine the 10-5 with the historical performance here at Muirfield. But I talked about it in the top 10. I understand Rory has not been a Rory. He hasn't had a Rory-like year. But the guy did just top 10 the PGA. It's not like his game has completely disappeared. The irons are still good enough. He's good around the green, top 10 at greens when it's difficult. Now, the par 3s do need a lot of work, and they are important here. So I am concerned with that. But to get a player of Rory's caliber at a projected 10%, give me Rory all day long, and I will take that risk. He is half the ownership of Patrick Cantlay projected right now. That is a whole lot of uniqueness you're gaining on a player that you're going to tell me doesn't have a chance to win this. He might not have the most chance to win. I mean, you might want to make Jon Rahm or Patrick Cantlay the favorite, but I mean, you see the course value here with Rory. It's not like he's been a disaster here at Muirfield. He's been pretty good. So in the 10Ks, I am all over Rory if indeed he is at 10%, and there would have been no way I'd have thought he was at 10%, but we saw it at PGA, where I believe on that Wednesday night, the DFS Tactics for the PGA, he was at 11%, or maybe a little bit under it. He comes in at less than 10 officially in the contests, and now he's projected at less than 10% here. So give me Rory all day long here in terms of the 10Ks, and I'm getting a whole lot of uniqueness right then and there off of some of my fellow contestants. Elsewhere in the 10K, like Patrick Cantlay, I'm going to make number 2. I mean, the guy just loves Memorial, loves Muirfield. He's fine. He's in fine form. He's second in par 5s, which you have to take advantage of here. He's the second best on fast and lightning bent greens. Patrick Cantlay is the chalk in the 10Ks. I will absolutely not shy away from, would not have any problem going to Cantlay. I'll make Jon Rahm third only because you can argue that he would be the 2-time winner in the past 5 years had he not had to withdraw due to the protocols that they still had in place. And you see his Jon Rahm's course value second only to Patrick Cantlay. So a lot to like here with Jon Rahm. And yes, while his putter can betray him, look at his performance on fast and lightning bent. He's actually top 10 in the field in fast and lightning bent greens. He putts bent pretty darn well. He generally putts fast and lightning greens well. So I'll make Jon Rahm third. I'll go Scheffler fourth and Xander fifth. And again, you see Xander's third in my rankings. I have no issue with Xander. I just think he's 5th out of these 5. I don't think he's got the upside that these others do. And like I said, I'm all about Rory if he's indeed in sub 10%. Moving into the 9s, Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, Jason Day, Tyrrell Hatton, Justin Thomas, Sung Jae, and Matt Fitzpatrick. Again, every single one of these players inside my top 20, so I do not fault anybody for using them. I think they're good plays. Your most projected owned player in here is Tyrrell Hatton, for good reason. He's played the Memorial very, very well. He generally plays difficult courses very, very well. He's top 10 in irons. But with the level or the amount of ownership based on Tyrrell Hatton and some of these other players in here, I can't say Hatton's a full fade. I'm sure I'll have him once, but he is a fade. Tyrrell Hatton is a fade for me this week because right above him, Jason Day lives in Ohio, in the northwestern Ohio area. And this is close to a home game for J-Day. He's in spectacular form. He's had a resurgence this year, a lot like Ricky. He's played the Memorial extremely well. And he's about as unique as Rory. I mean, he's technically more unique than Rory. But Rory's, or the 10Ks are also more popular than the 9Ks. But 9% on J-Day, 6th around the green. We've talked all week how important around the green is here. He does have to clean up the par 5s. He hasn't been the best on that this year. But top 15 and avoiding bogeys when it's difficult. Par 3s, just off your screen, of course. Par 3s, very good. Putting on fast and lightning bent, very good. I see a lot of potential with J-Day this week, and I think he's going to be very, very valuable if indeed he's only at 9% when you're plugging them into your DFS lineups. Justin Thomas, sub 11% on a player that's just as capable to win, like Rory. Now, the thing with him versus Jason Day and Rory, he is not very good on these bent greens. He does not like bent very, very much. His par 3s have been lacking as well. But, like Rory, you're going to give me a player that has the upside of winning the tournament, unique to some of these other players. I don't see any reason why you would want to get away from Justin Thomas or look to fade Justin Thomas unless you think the putting is that astronomically important. If that were the case, then yes, I could understand it. I generally talk up Colin Morikawa. Perhaps it's because I've been burned on him the past couple of times that I really talked him up, thinking the PGA, the Masters, or there's one other that he either missed the cut or just kind of trundled along on the weekend. Not as high on Colin Morikawa this week as I thought I would be. I mean, look, he's the number 1 player when hitting greens and it's difficult, number 3 in bogeys when it's difficult. But you see the around the green game is really bad, especially when the rough is long. So if he is off with his irons, and he has been off with his irons as recently as early this calendar year, it could be a long 2 days for him. Same reason with Victor Hovland. However, I do think Hovland's short game, his around the green game, has gotten considerably better. So even though he is the more chalky of the two, I would go with Hovland over Morikawa if I were choosing between those two. Again, I think enough people have been burned by Sung Jae lately that they're going to go off of him. I can't say that I would want to use him this week. He hasn't played Memorial the best, but at some point you're going to want to think about reconsidering Sung Jae. If he's indeed going to be at 7.5%, I don't know if it's this week, but really start paying attention to Sung Jae again. He's way too talented of a player to be at 7.5%. I know I said that about Rory at 10%, but Sung Jae's at 7.5%. In a big GPP, that's a lot of uniqueness on a quality player. For this week specifically, it's really tough for me to get behind because he hasn't shown a whole lot of form lately. 7.5% is pretty appealing. So in the 9Ks, like I said, I'm going with J-Day, home game narrative. He's played Memorial very well. Looks like the best of everybody in the 9Ks, with the exception of maybe Justin Thomas barely. The irons are fine. The around the green game is superb. Putts well on bent. I'm not scared of J-Day. I'll use him all day. I'm not scared of Justin Thomas. I would like to have considered putting a little bit more, so he might have fallen a little bit more had putting been weighted higher. But I'm not scared off with Justin Thomas. I believe in the irons. I believe in the creativity around the green. Sung Jae is very intriguing. I don't know if I can go there. Fitzpatrick, sure, maybe. His irons haven't been as good, even with this win at the RBC Heritage. His irons haven't been all that great, so that worries me a little bit. It's really hard for me to back a 16% Terrell Hatton. I'm sure I'll have him once for the coverage, but I think it's a fade. Or I know it's a fade. I can't say it's a full fade. Morikawa's a fade. Hovland's a fade, but I would go with Hovland before Morikawa. All right, let's move to the 8s. Talked about it in the reveal of my top 10. Everything analytically lines up for Jordan Spieth. Jordan Spieth's a full fade for me. I just don't trust the wrist. I don't think he's fully healthy. I think he's hiding more than what he's letting on or whatever. So just not there with Jordan Spieth. I'm actually in on Cameron Young this week. And I know that course value is bad. Don't get too hung up on it. It's only one time. The irons are okay. They need improvement. He needs to hit greens. But the reason I'm a little higher on Cam Young is this. He's been very good around the green, especially when in long rough. We know he has the distance, so the 7,500 yards isn't going to bother him. He takes advantage of par 5s. Now the putting on bent, kind of like Justin Thomas, does concern you a little bit. But it's the par 5s, the around the green, which he's pretty adept at. 5% on a Cameron Young. I think that's pretty, again, way too talented of a player to be sitting at 5%. So I've been gravitating towards Cam Young quite a bit. I think Hideki's fine. At 16% is pretty heavy. I can't get behind 16%, but I think the player in general is fine. The irons are good. He's a ball striker. He'll avoid bogeys. He's 8th in this field on fast and lightning bent greens. I like the player. I don't like the ownership. So if you're comfortable using that chalk, hopefully I'm going to be able to provide you with some uniqueness elsewhere in the price board. I'm choosing to use my chalk elsewhere, especially higher up. So I'm not as high on Hideki, but I like the player. I don't like the ownership. Sam Burns, I mean, he played well last week, but I'm still not there with him. The irons still haven't been good. They weren't great last week. He is pretty good around the green. Par 5s he actually hasn't been very good at either. I just don't see this lining up very well for Sam Burns. You see the course performance or course value pretty bad. Same thing with Hideki. I like Ricky this week. I don't like the ownership. Between the two, I would go Ricky over Hideki, but I also think Ricky's going to be more owned than Hideki. So take that what you will. But everything lines up for Ricky to play well this week. I do think Ricky will find the upper edges of the leaderboard. I can't say top 5 or top 10, but I would not be surprised to see him on the first 2 pages of the leaderboard. He generally plays Memorial well, and things line up for him this week. Another player that I'm surprised that I'm gravitating towards, because I generally don't with Cameron Young, I've been gravitating towards Sahith Theegala, and a lot of it is behind this course value. Look, he's 2 for 2 here. If it had only been one time, I'd have said, okay, he had a very good week, move on. When you do it twice, there's something about the course that you like. he's not finished, or he's averaged a 19th place finish. The irons have been okay, surprisingly to me, because he's generally not rated out well with irons. It's the around the green game that saves him, especially with Muirfield. The par threes, he's been very, very good at par threes as well this calendar year. Nothing with me likes the thought of Sahith Theegala or backing Sahith Theegala, at least from an analyst standpoint. It's all about in that prior course value, prior course performance, and he's done it twice now. There's something about Memorial that he just has played well. A lot of the fantasy national community, hey P, evening, thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully you're ready for some Memorial. I'm glad I could help you with your spelling earlier. You know what I'm talking about. Very well done there, sir. Connors is getting a whole lot of love. I understand it. Ball striking, top 15, third in greens. He's not the best around the green. So if he does have an off iron week, which is very rare, but if he has an off iron week, it's going to be a long 2 days for him. I'm willing to fade Connors. That's a dangerous game. I generally love Corey Connors because of the irons. I think I'm going to fade Corey Connors and let others take that risk and say that his around the green game really hurts him this week. Wyndham Clark, for the same reason I'm on Sahith Theegala, I'm off Wyndham Clark. If it had only been one time, I'd have said, you know what, he had a bad week. It happens. He's played this 2 or 3 times, and 3 times actually. He's missed the cut twice. He's had really poor performances, as you can see. What I will say that is giving Wyndham Clark some consideration or worth a look, he is not the same player he has been. He's a lot better now, and you see the form or that current rank, the analytics here. 3rd in irons in this field, 6th in par 5s just off your screen. He's a lot better player than he has been the past 3 years, but this course value really does scare me. Instead, if I've been in the low 8s, as much as I'll dabble in Shane Lowry, I'll always have a little bit of exposure to him just because I think he's a solid player. I'm going to Siwoo. This is some chalk I'll eat. You see this course value. He's 5 for 5 in making the cut the past 5 years with an average finish of 22nd. The irons are good. He's very good around the green. The par 3s, very good. He's also very good at par 4s if they do end up mattering a little bit more than I've given them weight to. So I've been gravitating towards Siwoo in the low 8s beyond the, I'll say, obligatory, like I'll have Shane Lowry a little bit. I might have Wyndham Clark once just because he's a different player than what he was here. 17% is a whole lot on Corey Connors. I don't know if I'll go there. I think Adam Scott's fine. 13% is a little bit high for me. Granted, Adam Scott never rates out well for me, and I know that. He's kind of like Brooks Koepka for me in that regard. But you see, he has played Memorial fantastically the past 5 years. The irons haven't been great, but he's a much better iron player than this. I mean, he's a much better iron player, or much better player than what the analytics are showing here. So I think Adam Scott is fine. I think at 13% is a little high, but I think it's fine. In the 8Ks, I'm going to get Cam Young. I'm going to Sahith Theegala. It's tough. I think I have to back Ricky a little bit. I just think he plays well. I hate that percentage of ownership. I have Wyndham Clark a little bit. I'll have Shane Lowry a little bit. Oh gosh, what am I doing? I'll have Shane Lowry a little bit, and I'm really backing Siwoo Kim, even though he is a little bit more projected owned than some of the others in the 8Ks. Moving into the upper 7s, I'm going to direct your attention to Russell Henley. Now the course value has not been great. It's been all or nothing. So he has some very top-end finishes, and he has some very poor performances. But you're thinking ball striking like Corey Connors, you got to think about Russell Henley. top 40 in iron play in this elite field. The around the green game is actually pretty darn good as well. He's combining approach and around the green. You can guess what the terrible metric is. It's his putting. So I'll choose to believe in the irons and around the green and hope that he makes a putt or two. But I think Russell Henley at 8.5% is going to give you a whole lot of value in your lineups. Tom Kim, I'm really not on any first-time player. Actually, you can see Tom Kim. He's the highest priced first-time player here at Memorial. 34th. I think he might actually be the highest first-time starter in my rankings. Just not all that high on first-time starters here at Memorial. Kind of like the Charles Schwab. And this just doesn't feel like a good fit for Tom Kim. He generally likes shorter courses. He's been okay when it's difficult. 21st in greens, 28th at avoiding bogeys. I don't see long courses being a fit for him. And you see the par threes and the putting has been pretty bad. So I got enough reason to fade or be off of Tom Kim. I like Keegan. The metrics don't like him at all. I kind of like Keegan this week, so take a look at Keegan. I really like Gary Woodland again. Long, difficult. When you hear those two things, you got to think about Gary Woodland. The around the green game is bad. The putting is bad. I'm going on the ball striking. 10th and 13th in approach and greens. It's also just outside the top 20 in par 5s. So I'm going to go with the ball striking narrative on Gary Woodland, and I'm surprised he's not as highly owned as I would have thought. I mentioned last week at the Charles Schwab that Cam Davis season is probably going to be open. I'm more so targeting him later on in the bent grass season, thinking John Deere, Rocket Mortgage, where he won in 2021. Memorial, Charles Schwab, they don't feel like good fits for Cam Davis. But you're playing Cam Davis for the absolute home run. The guy can get really, really hot, really, really quickly, especially on bent grass. That's his much preferred surface. So playing Cam Davis is an absolute home run. It's an all or nothing. I don't hate it. I'm not going there this week. I'm willing to take a risk on other players that are more more consistent. As I'm not interested in the home run all or nothing for Cam Davis. That's why I would outright Cam Davis if it were me. Denny McCarthy, if you think putting is going to be much more important, go ahead. He's played Memorial okay. The metrics like him. The analytics like him. Irons are going to have to be a little bit better, which they have been. So if you think putting is going to be a lot more important than the weight that I've given it, give it a consideration. Anytime you hear difficult, you always got to think about Keith Mitchell as well. He's played well here. A lot of people are off of him because of his irons, and I am too. I'm not there with Keith Mitchell, but I would not be surprised to see him play well, considering his prior course success and the fact that he generally plays difficult courses very, very well. Nowhere near Billy Horschel or English or Kuchar for that matter. Horschel's played this event very, very well. So if you want that angle, sure, I'm not there. Instead, I've been finding a whole lot in the lower sevens that I really like. Chris Kirk at sub 7%. Number 2 in around the green. And we've talked all week how important around the green is at Muirfield. Top 35 in irons. Of course, he's had a very good season already, or a good calendar year. He needs to be better at the par 5s. Yes. Bogeys avoided. Good. He's decent enough on bent. He's not great, but he's decent enough on fast and lightning bent. And he's also very, very good at par 4s if they end up mattering a little bit more. I like Chris Kirk quite a bit. K.H. Lee is somebody else that has been kind of sneaky for me, that I've been kind of looking at. I think the around the green game is a little better than what this is showing. He's 8th in par 5s. He's also not terrible on bent. I've been targeting KH Lee for the uniqueness factor. That's it. If I feel like getting frisky, I might throw in a KH Lee a time or two. I don't hate it. Hadwin's also quite interesting around the green and putting based. Bezadenhout, he's played this event very well, but man, it does not feel like this lines up well for him. But he's played well here. He's actually been top 30 in irons, but he doesn't hit a lot of greens. He's atrocious at par 5s. He is 2nd in par 3s, and he's the number 1 fast and lightning bent putter, so okay, I guess. I can see myself using him a time or two, but I'm not crazy about it. Elsewhere in the low 7s, if there is a player that, a first-time player at Memorial that I might think about, it's Nicolai Højgaard. The irons are good. He devours par 5s. And he's very good at par 3s. I don't love it. But if there were a player that I would use that's a first-time starter, it would be Nicolai Højgaard. I'm not there, but he's the top first-time starter in my opinion. You can also look at Jaeger. He's in good form. I mean, he's just in very, very good form. So one of these two I think would be my option or my top choice if you want to get really unique on a first-time starter. Like you were questioning, Bruce, Monday, what does prior course form look like for the winners and whatnot. For winners, there's only been one first-time starter. That was Hideki in 2014. But it doesn't preclude you from at least playing well. So if you wanted to take that route, that's where I would go with that. All right, couple of players, actually three or so players that I want to mention in the 6Ks. Hopefully they're going to be a little bit unique, although I imagine one of them won't be. First off is Adam Schenk. Not just from last week either. I mean, he's played the Memorial fairly decent for somebody that's, priced in the 6Ks. You see the greens. I mean, he's just hitting greens in regulation. He's just kind of fairly solid. He avoids bogeys. Par 3s are good. He's good enough on fast and lightning bent. He's just kind of solid. The iron play has been the weak point, but I don't know. I don't hate it. I like other 6Ks more, but since he's the first one I came to, or that's the highest at 6,800, I don't hate it. I didn't mention it last week. I really should have. Kind of like Gary Woodland. Anytime you think, or in your mind, you're hearing long and difficult, you got to think Kevin Streelman. Now, he was not in very good form at all coming into the Charles Schwab. Now that he's, got some success under him, you see he's actually starting to garner a little bit of attention. 6th and around the green. 15th, greens when it's difficult. 25th in bogeys avoided. This is your cheap Gary Woodland. Anytime you hear long and difficult, Kevin Streelman generally plays those courses well. Yeah, as far as win equity going with the guys who have some history here. Yeah, I think that's the right approach. Just saying, if you wanted to get or find a little bit of uniqueness, it's an option. 2 more here in the 6Ks. I really, really like Aaron Rai this week. Don't get too hung up on the course value. It's good, but it's only one time. It was a T26. The irons are very good, even rated for this field. The irons are very good. He hits plenty of greens. The around the green game is okay. Going to have to be a lot better at par 5s. Going to have to be a lot better at par 3s. But I'm really believing in the iron play. He's shown that he can at least play here. as he made the cut to a T26 his only time in the past 5 years. I really like Aaron Rai this week. I'll also give an honorable mention, I suppose, to Sam Stevens, just because of how good a form he's in, kind of like Stefan Jaeger. I much prefer Højgaard and Jaeger on first-time starters, but now seeing his name, where'd he go? Seeing his name, Sam Stevens, I don't hate it. I would go with the other two. The last 6K name I want to give you all, and this is purely on one thing and one thing only. Matt Wallace, around the green. He is one of the premier around the green players. I mean, you see Danny Willett at the same price is first in around the green. I just believe in Matt Wallace a little bit more. He has a win already this calendar year. The irons are better. He hits more greens. They're roughly the same putter. And you just see, like, they are pretty far apart in terms of purely by the numbers. I've been using Matt Wallace a little bit more than I should, is how I'll phrase it. I think Matt Wallace will be okay this week, especially with this around the green, with his around the green prowess. And if you're going to go with that, you can look at Danny Willett. I would just prefer Matt Wallace. But, I mean, that's literally about the only thing that's going for Matt Wallace. The fact that he is so good around the green, and he already has a win this calendar year, so he's at least in decent form. He's also not terrible, or he's actually pretty good at avoiding bogeys when it's difficult. His win at the Corrales, even though it's an alternate field event, that course isn't easy. I don't think it's as difficult as Memorial, but that course isn't easy. And he worked his way around that course to a win. So take a look at Matt Wallace. I think it's a worthwhile inclusion in your stars and scrubs. All right, been going for quite a while. We still have to make some lineups and get to your all's questions. So I'll let you all prepare those as I go through tiers lineups. So for those who play tiers contests, tier 1, you have Scotty Scheffler, Jon Rahm, and Rory. Oh, everything tells me that I want to take Rory. Everything tells me I want to take Rory. Oh, but I think you need to go Jon Rahm in tier 1 for the safety. I really do. But man, if ownerships in tiers are anything similar to Classic, and Rory is this unique, it's very hard to pass up Rory. But give me Jon Rahm in tier 1. Tier 2, Cantlay, Schauffele, Morikawa, Hovland, and Hatton. Give me Patrick Cantlay, Mr. Memorial himself. I think Schauffele, I think Xander's fine. I think Tyrrell Hatton is fine. Just give me Patrick Cantlay, the strokes gained total leader the past 5 years by miles. So I'll go Rahm, Cantlay. Tier 3, Jason Day, Justin Thomas, Sung Jae, Matt Fitzpatrick, and Cam Young. Same thing kind of in tier 1. Everything tells me I want to take Cam Young here. But I think Jason Day is actually pretty unique as well. Justin Thomas is interesting. Ooh, that's tough. Make a decision, Nick. Give me Jason Day. But it's pretty close between all three of them, to be fair. Give me Day. But that's close. Tier 4. Jordan Spieth, Hideki, Sam Burns, Ricky, Sahith, Corey Connors, and Shane Lowry. If you're not scared with Jordan Spieth's wrist, everything analytically lines up there. If you want the overwhelmingly chalky but, the course form play, take Ricky. I'm going to take Sahith Theegala in Tier 4. As much as that seems odd for me to hear myself say that, but he's played very well here. Shane Lowry would probably be okay too, but give me Theegala in Tier 4. Tier 5, Wyndham Clark, Siwoo, Adam Scott, Russell Henley, Tom Kim, Keegan, and Denny McCarthy. Yeah, give me Siwoo. Even if he is chalky, 5 for 5. I mean, yeah, just give me Siwoo in tier 5. It's pretty simple on that. Russell Henley would be worth a look as well. Tier 6, Patrick Rogers, Thomas Detry, Ryan Fox, Seamus Power, Nikolai Højgaard, Stefan Jaeger, and Bo Hostler. Well, it's kind of like I was mentioning in Classic, since most of these players are first-time starters here. I don't like the course fit for Rogers, even though it's not terrible. Fox and Power have not played it well, although it's only one time. Me, personally, because of the lineup that I've went so far, I'm actually going to take Højgaard, try to hit the home run for a tiers lineup in tier 6. I think it's between Højgaard and Jaeger. I'll take Højgaard, but Jaeger's just as fine as well. All right, that's a look at tiers lineups. Let's start building some classical lineups, or classic lineups, and get your all's questions ready for what lineups you all have. All right, so our fellow contestants, we're going to try to make the chalkiest lineup that we can. It looks like we're going to use the most common player, most projected owned, Patrick Cantlay, and then we'll try to squeeze in a Tyrrell Hatton. Might be a bit expensive because nobody in the 6Ks is really garnering a whole lot of attention. You've got Eric Cole at 7.5, Vincent 7.5. I guess Alex Smalley at 8%, Streelman at 8%, Eckroat at 9%. They're gaining a little bit, so that's chalky for the 9K range. The most common player looks like it's being bottomed out of Ben On, but considering we went with Cantlay and Hatton, I'm just going to use Eckroat at 8.9%. This might not be the most chalky we can make this lineup. Just trying to give you an idea, though. So Cantlay, Hatton, dropping down, probably Ricky. Then leaves us with 7,500. You've got Ben On at 10.5. Bezadenhout is at 72. Is there anybody high at? So like, there's nobody really at 7,000, or else I would have gone like an 8,000, 7,000. So we can look at. Let's do Ben On. I mean, 77, choose where. I mean, the most common player is Gary Woodland, but that's not very common at all. It's 13%. Perhaps our fellow contestants are maybe dropping down a little bit more. Say go to Hideki, Corey Connors. Yeah, this looks more chalky already. Siwoo, and well, Adam Scott's 100 over. Damn. Yeah, we'll throw in. I'll just say Adam Scott. Just understand that this lineup's $100 over. Just trying to give you an idea on some of the names that might be circulating around. This is at 15%. Pretty darn chalky, especially for a field of only 120. But I think majority of our fellow contestants are probably building balanced looking lineups. Looking like a Tyrrell Hatton, a Hideki, Ricky. I'm trying to use some different names here. Maybe a Shane Lowry. Ben On. Might actually be able to fit, yeah, Adam Scott. So, Adam Scott and Ben On. Sorry, itch. Oh. So there's a 14% lineup. And of course, a lot of these names are interchangeable. Tyrrell Hatton could be. Where'd he go? Maybe Victor. Patrick Cantlay earlier could have been Xander. I really don't know how our fellow contestants are building around Rahm and Scheffler with nobody being a lot owned in the 6Ks. Unless I mean, unless they're doing this and everybody's just got a different view, that's kind of hard to believe. I mean, I guess Bezadenhout at 9.9 might be... And this is still going to be very hard to build. Bezadenhout being on... Gosh dang it. Yeah, I really don't know. Siwoo 82, like Shane Lowry and Corey Connors. Yeah, I don't see a lot of lineups built like that, but that is quite a bit of ownership. All right, that's a look at some of the common lineups that appear to be being built. I can speak English. Let me show you how I'm maneuvering around this. I think they're skipping 9K. That's why so many good players load. Yeah, okay. I can see it. I mean, Hatton, other than Hatton, looks like you're right. Other than Hatton, looks like a lot of uniqueness in there. Could be right. Good observation, Bruce. Hatton's getting a lot of love, but yeah. So speaking of that, if we're going to be building around that, or at least the way I've been building around it, I'll show you a couple different ways. I'll show you the I can't call it a stars and scrubs, but if I'm going to the 10Ks, I've talked about it a lot. Give me Rory at half the ownership of Cantley. Still think he's primed enough to win. So I'll go Rory and Day. Get two sub 10% players in a 10 and a 9. And I am just as confident in Rory winning this as almost anybody else in the field. Jason Day, resurgent season. He's played Memorial extremely well. He's from Northwest Ohio, or lives in Northwest Ohio. I actually think it might be in Columbus. I don't see any reason why Jason Day won't be solid. And depending on how greedy you really want to get, like maybe you try to throw in a Justin Thomas with this. It's really greedy. Don't get me wrong, but that's why I gave you quite a few names in the 6Ks. Aaron Rye, who I really like. Matt Wallace, who I've been using a whole lot more than I should. I'll go with Aaron Rye in case you all are not comfortable going as far down as Matt Wallace. I am, but if you go Aaron Rye, you get 7,100 per player here. There's quite a few players, that are worthy speculation. I mentioned KH Lee, Adam Hadwin. Maybe you like Bezadenhout this week. He's not too terribly highly owned. Højgaard and Jaeger are a little bit, speculative since they're first-time starters. I wouldn't mind throwing them in a lineup or two. Chris Kirk, for that matter. Chris Kirk's probably a little bit too expensive for this. Like if I come off of Justin Thomas and go Cam Young, like I can easily throw in. Well, I can't say easily, but now I can do a KH Lee, and oh gosh, I can do even more than that. 72 was Hadwin. Or Bezadenhout. And then 75, Billy Horschel, Harris English, Chris Kirk. I mean, there's a sub 7% lineup. And Rory, Day, you gonna tell me Cameron Young doesn't have the talent to win this? I certainly think he does. Chris Kirk's in fine form. Hadwin's a bit speculative, sure. And I really like Aaron Rye. He's showed that he can play this event and play this course well. Sub 7%. And you can move some of these names around. Maybe you don't even want to jump into the 6Ks. You're willing to come off Day. Maybe you're okay with Speed. Fitzpatrick, very low ownership. So, very, very promising there in that regard. But the most common way I've been building lineups this week, I'm going to coin the phrase. I don't know if it's been used anywhere else. I'm going to call this a balanced -1 build. And I've been okay starting my team at a Jason Day at 94, a Justin Thomas at 92 if I want to get real crazy, Sung Jae at 91, and just load up in this range. Go Sung Jae, Cameron Young, Sahith Theegala, Siwoo Kim, Gary Woodland, Russell Henley. I mean, shoot, 8,000 is Adam Scott. Like, you can build a full-on balanced lineup doing that. I've been doing it a little bit more expensive. But Jason Day, Justin Thomas. Gosh dang it. Justin Thomas. Cam Young fits in this, but we've already used him. Again, Sahith Theegala. Corey Connors, I could throw in a time or two. Maybe. Wyndham Clark, maybe. Like I said, Siwoo, I really, really like. He's also pretty chalky. Throw in, we'll say Russell Henley. And I call it the -1 because generally I've been dropping into the 6Ks, whether that is for 68. Where is he? You know, whether I've jumped in for an Adam Schenk, a Kevin Streelman, Austin Eckroat. That's why I've been calling this the balanced -1. I'll throw in Kevin Streelman. It's 10, you know, generally right at 10%, and it'll come down a whole lot if you come off of Siwoo. Like if we go Gary Woodland here, and you can really move some numbers around. You got 700. You can move Streelman up to Bazadu, maybe. You're still under 10%. It's not necessarily the -1 portion now, but hopefully that gives you an idea of the type of lineups that I've really been focused around. Really, these, you know, starting in the mid-9s. Jason Day, I might throw in a Hovland once. I'll throw in a Hatton maybe once, but Day, Thomas, take a look at Sung Jae, and then working my way down to Cameron Young, Hideki. I love the player. I don't like the ownership. Theegala, Wyndham Clark once, Siwoo Kim, Russell Henley, Keegan, Gary Woodland, Keith Mitchell, on down, and then, you know, I'm not scared to jump into the 6Ks for an Aaron Rai, a Kevin Streelman, a Matt Wallace for these one-offs. So those are the lineups that I've been building the most. But I mean, you can absolutely build like a very unique Rory lineup we just saw. So I'll stick around for a couple minutes if anyone has any questions. But a reminder that after the show, I will be over on Substack with Gabe and on his chat with the Fringe. And we'll be doing some more DFS talk over there. So I'm grateful to Gabe to have me on over there. And if you are not a subscriber to Gabe, I highly suggest you do so. Very, very, very good article that he writes every week. Struggling with Ricky, feel so good about him, but that's a lot of chalk. Yeah. So, like Ricky, like Hideki, I like Ricky a lot this week. You see, he has played the Memorial very, very well. Just purely by the analytics, he is 4th in this field. Almost top 5 in irons, top 15 in long rough. Like 50th is his worst stat of everything that we gathered to put in the mixed condition model. I don't like the ownership, but everything says he should play well. And then coming off the Charles Schwab and the very strong performance there, I would definitely use Ricky before Hideki. I would use Ricky before Corey Connors. But if you're using Ricky, you have to be extremely careful to try to avoid a Cantley Ricky, a Rahm Ricky. I imagine probably might be a pretty common start for a lot of contestants because he's going to be very chalky for good reason. So Ricky is not a fade for me. I'm struggling myself to figure out how I want to utilize him. I mean, is he going to be the only chalk that I have in a lineup? Maybe. But everything says Ricky should be pretty good this week. Bruce. But yeah, good question. You have to plant your flag somewhere. Last couple of weeks, or at least especially last week at the Charles Schwab, I felt like I was pretty strong on who to avoid. Tommy Fleetwood, Eric Cole. I just didn't give you the right players to use. I gave you who to avoid. Hoping to match both of those this week. That'd be great. Like I said, I think Tagala is going to be pretty good. He's been very good here. Cam Young at 5% seems spectacular. If indeed he ends up at being 5%, I don't see how he can be. And I don't see Rory. I don't understand why Rory is under 10%. He's coming off a top 10 at the PGA. Gonna fade a bunch of others in the 9 and 8 and roll with Ricky. I mean, yeah, it's a good play. Like you said, you got to plant your flag somewhere. I would go with Ricky over Hideki and Corey Connors for what it's worth. I really do like Siwoo, though, and Siwoo's a lot cheaper. Probably about the same ownership, but I do think Siwoo's going to play well this week. So that's someone else you could maybe think about. But with that, doesn't look like there's any other questions. Absolutely. So Bruce and Darnell and P, thanks for jumping in chat. Always appreciated. I love what I do. You all come back show after show and make it worth it. You make it fun looking at stats and trying to win a little bit of money in the process. Always appreciated. Follow me on if you don't follow me on social media, I ask that you consider doing so. I will try to update my schedule. I'm not sure what my Friday night plans are yet, so I don't know if there will be a Friday night stream. There might be, there might not be. Plans are kind of up in the air. So give me a follow over at Twitter. I will make sure to update my schedule there. And Twitter is also where I'm going to place my betting cards, and I place my baseball content if you're interested in that. So thanks to everyone who jumped in chat. Thanks to everyone who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel. Always appreciated. For all of the wagers that you've made this week for the Memorial, for all the DFS contests you've entered this week for the Memorial, for this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.